They are using the same old tactic that the deep state's propaganda arm in the media uses. Whenever they come across something that is true and that doesn't go along with whatever their narrative is that they're trying to shove down the throats of the American people, they first usually ignore it, as they did when I first released these documents.
All right, let's get into this. Because if even half of what Tulsi Gabbard is saying here turns out to be true, then the story we were all told about RussiaGate isn't just shaky, it's straight up fraudulent. Now, before we dive in, quick favor. If you believe truth shouldn't have a party affiliation, if you're tired of being gaslit by the same recycled narratives, and if you actually want to hear debates instead of talking points, go ahead and hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps the channel a ton, and trust me, you're gonna want to stick around for what comes next. Because here's the big question nobody in the mainstream media wants to touch. Did Tulsi Gabbard just pull the curtain back on Barack Obama's role in setting up the RussiaGate saga before he even left office? That sounds dramatic, I know, but once you actually listen to what's being said, and more importantly, look at the documents now being declassified, it stops sounding like conspiracy talk and starts sounding like a cover-up that's slowly unraveling.
Director, you said there was irrefutable evidence that Obama was the mastermind of this intelligence manipulation and the perpetuation of the Russia hoax. What is that irrefutable evidence for our viewers tonight?
President Obama directed that a National Security Council meeting be called to talk about Russia, that the report that came out of that meeting was filled with tasks that were delivered by James Clapper's assistant to John Brennan and to other elements of the intelligence community. John Brennan was the head of the CIA at the time, all saying per the president's direction, per the president's order. And very specifically, they were tasked to create an intelligence assessment that detailed how Moscow tried to influence the election, not if, but how. And this was the beginning of this manufactured intelligence assessment where they knowingly wrote things in this assessment that were false, and they knew they were false. They knew that they were basing it on discredited intelligence or documents like the Steele dossier that was politically motivated and that they knew was false.
Now, you don't have to take Tulsi's word alone. That's the part the media really doesn't want you to focus on, because we now have declassified documents that line up with what she's saying. Chief among them is the Durham Annex, a 29-page document that lays out in uncomfortable detail how intelligence agencies took a claim from the Clinton campaign and injected it straight into the bloodstream of the national conversation. Not verified intelligence, not corroborated sources, a campaign claim, and here's where it gets even more damning. According to that annex, Obama was fully briefed on a Clinton campaign plan to tie Donald Trump to Russia, not because it was proven, but because it was politically useful. An August 3rd, 2016 White House meeting reportedly included Obama, Biden, and senior officials being informed of this strategy. The goal? Distract from Hillary Clinton's email scandal by shifting the public narrative. And if that's accurate, this wasn't about national security, it was about political damage control. And suddenly, a lot of things that never quite added up start to add up. Why did the Russia narrative explode immediately after Trump won? Why were leaks constant but accountability non-existent? Why did the media treat every anonymous intel claim as unquestionable truth? Tulsi doesn't mince words. She says Obama is guilty of treason. Now, that's a heavy accusation.
Obama is guilty of treason, that there's almost no chance that he's going to be charged or convicted of treason, so why even go there? And I'll pose that question to you.
The integrity of our democratic republic depends on the American people knowing the truth about what actually happened and seeking that accountability, bringing about that accountability. I don't know how else to characterize what happens when there is a sitting president of the United States, there is a director of the CIA, a director of national intelligence under President Obama, the head of the NSA, James Comey is the head of the FBI, all coming together, and this is documented in what we released, all coming together to create this lie with the intent of delegitimizing the duly elected president of the United States because the person they wanted to win actually lost.
This isn't just about punishment, it's about truth and accountability. Because even if Obama himself is untouchable, the people who carried out these actions aren't necessarily protected. And that's why this moment matters. Because this material isn't just floating around on Twitter, it's reportedly sitting in front of a grand jury. That changes the stakes entirely. This isn't cable news theater anymore. This is legal scrutiny. And if these documents hold up, we're not talking about a minor scandal or a partisan disagreement. We're talking about something that could dwarf Watergate. And that explains the panic. Look at the reaction, or rather the lack of coverage. From the mainstream media, for years, RussiaGate dominated headlines, wall-to-wall coverage, endless panels, breathless speculation. But now that documents are coming out that challenge the foundation of that entire narrative, silence. And when silence doesn't work, they pivot. Suddenly it's old news. Suddenly we're told to move on. CNN runs pieces accusing Tulsi of rewriting history. NBC frames her declassification efforts as a national security threat, conveniently citing unnamed sources, of course. Ask yourself this: if there's really nothing to see here, why the coordinated effort to discredit, minimize, and attack the messenger? Tulsi calls this out directly. She says the media is using the same old tactic the deep state's propaganda arm has always used.
You heard the media reaction, and a lot of these same people were just buying lock, stock, and barrel what was sold to them during the 2016 election. But they're essentially saying, this is all old news. This is such a stupid political move on their part. And to that, you say?
They are using the same old tactic that the deep state's propaganda arm in the media uses. Whenever they come across something that is true and that doesn't go along with whatever their narrative is that they're trying to shove down the throats of the American people, they first usually ignore it, as they did when I first released these documents a couple of weeks ago. They tried to ignore it. When they realized that they weren't going to get away with this, that this story was going to continue breathing life, we continued releasing new documents, then they decided, oh, we'll take this approach of say, oh, this is nothing. There's nothing really to see here. This is bizarre. This is a conspiracy. These are the things that they do over and over and over again.
First, ignore the truth. If that fails, dismiss it as conspiracy. If that fails, attack the person revealing it. Rinse, repeat. And it's not just media figures getting nervous. Democratic lawmakers are starting to lash out too. Senator Mark Warner goes so far as to say Tulsi is a threat to national security and should be fired. Fired for declassifying documents. Let that irony marinate for a second. Tulsi's response? She doesn't flinch. She points out that these are the same tactics Washington warhawks have used for decades. Anyone who questions them, challenges them, or exposes their behavior is smeared as dangerous, unpatriotic, a risk. Because the real threat isn't foreign interference. It's Americans seeing behind the curtain. That's the part they can't control. And here's where the story really hits home. Whether you like Trump or hate him, whether you voted Democrat, Republican, or not at all, this isn't about defending one man. This is about defending the integrity of the system itself. Because if intelligence agencies can be weaponized to delegitimize an election outcome, if narratives can be manufactured from the top down, then no election is ever really safe. Not from foreign interference, but from internal manipulation. And once that line is crossed, it doesn't matter who's in power, the precedent is set.
This was another reason they clearly did not want you in your position. And to that point, Mark Warner, of course, Democrat senator from Virginia, wrote on X today, Tulsi Gabbard is a threat to our national security and should be fired. He's taking his orders pretty well, don't you think, Director?
He has and continues to be a reliable soldier. And you're right there, Laura, to make that comparison, because these very same tactics they are using now are the same tactics that the warmongers of Washington have consistently used whenever anyone challenges them to say, hey, this does not serve the best interests of the American people. It does not make us more safe, secure, and free. So why are you doing this? Exposing these people for who they are. And once again, who is the deep state? What does it consist of? We're seeing this revealed in real time here. And it's important for the American people to pay attention and realize, like, hey, with the mainstream propaganda media, we got to pay attention. We got to use our common sense and recognize we should accept nothing they say at face value.
This story isn't going away, not with grand juries involved, not with documents being released, and not with people like Tulsi refusing to back down. You don't have to agree with everything she says. Skepticism is healthy, but dismissal without examination, that's exactly what got us here in the first place. So I'll leave you with this. If RussiaGate was truly about protecting democracy, why does transparency suddenly feel so dangerous? Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think this is the beginning of a real reckoning? Or will it be buried like so many stories before it? And if you want more debates, more breakdowns, and more conversations the media won't have, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes the official story never lies.